Is your borderline girlfriend, that sweet, vulnerable, loving, damaged little victim, is that borderline actually a covert psychopath? I'm not trying to hurt you, but I will, she says. Let's talk about it. So in order to understand what is a covert psychopath, there's a couple of things here. First off, we don't think of, or many people don't think of borderlines as actually being narcissists. But listen, I've been with a borderline. I grew up with a borderline mother and a comorbid borderline narcissist brother. So it's extremely difficult to see the narcissist and the borderline when they are being vulnerable, when they are in their intermittent states of false empathy, which is they feel empathy, but it doesn't last. I call that false empathy. And it's very hard to see the narcissist in them. When they're love bombing you, it's very hard to see the narcissist in them. So understand that if we're talking about a mental disorder, if we're talking about borderline personality disorder, and you know that the person you're with has this disorder, we're talking about a mental illness. And it is a fact, if you really look into the psychological literature, that you will eventually come to the realization, as is said many times, that borderline personality disorder is in fact just a subset of narcissistic personality disorder. There is no difference. The only difference between an overt, grandiose narcissist and a covert psychopath, which is a borderline, the only difference is how they express it. And as we've said before, the narcissist has an internal fantasy where they are God, and they pull you into their internal fantasy. That is their goal, is to pull you out of objective reality and pull you and have you wear a costume and put on the makeup and say the script that they have going on inside their fantasy. It doesn't work. That's why they're so abusive. The borderline does the exact same thing except opposite. Instead of pulling you into their fantasy, they take their fantasy and they paint it onto the world, and they paint you in all of the colors they want you to be. They're trying to do the same thing, get you to play the role in their fantasy. So it's a different expression of the same thing. But borderlines, as you know, can be extremely vulnerable. They can be extremely emotionally accessible. They can show tremendous amounts of love and, as I call, false empathy. In the moment, it's real. It's not that they're lying. It just doesn't last. So it's very hard to see that they're actually a covert psychopath. Covert means hidden. In this case, when we're talking about a covert narcissist, we're talking about it is hidden even to the narcissist themselves. So this is why the majority of the stuff you see on YouTube talking about covert narcissist, this is the projection of the victim. The victim experiences that they've been lied to and manipulated by somebody who pretended to be something they weren't, and then they were damaged. That's called a grandiose narcissist. Grandiose narcissists plan it out. When borderlines come onto my channel and they want to argue with me because I say that borderlines are in fact a form of narcissistic personality disordered people, they get very upset and they say, I'm not a narcissist. I don't plan on hurting people. So again, the misconception even among people who are in, I assume they're in therapy, thinking that a covert narcissist is somebody who's hiding behind a mask and laughing evilly as they plan out your demise. No, that is the grandiose narcissist. A covert narcissist is somebody where the narcissism is hidden from not only sight outside, but from the individual themselves. And this is exactly what borderlines say. I don't mean to hurt you, I can't help it. It's hidden even from them, which in my experience, it makes it kind of more insidious. So in the literature, in the psychological literature, borderlines have been called covert narcissists. They've also been called vulnerable narcissists. And this is where you get the difference between, again, the stereotypical narcissist. We're talking about the grandiose narcissist who sees themselves as being perfect, who portrays themselves as being perfect, that they have no problems, they're invulnerable. And of course, none of that is true, but that's how they present themselves, and that is how the victim experiences them. So from that perspective, you can't imagine that kind of narcissist having any empathy or any feelings for you because your experience of them. But the opposite is true with the borderline. The borderline makes you feel ultimately loved. The borderline, when they are love bombing you, when they are in their vulnerable state, they come across completely helpless, and when they're in the mood, they will absolutely pour all kinds of love and seeming compassion and nurturing all over you. So it's very hard to see them as narcissists, but they're covert narcissists. First off, all of that love bombing is transference and projection. Transference means they take their unresolved love for their narcissistic parents that they never got to experience or to give to their parents. Their parents wouldn't let them. They then take it and give it to you. They treat you as the parent, and they pour all of the transference. It has got nothing to do with you. It's love that they've got bottled up for their parents that they barf out all over you. And then there's projection, which is they are unconsciously pouring all the love onto you that they want you to pour onto them. They're training you. They're entraining you. They're showing you, here, do this to me. They're not doing it consciously. Consciously, they honestly believe you are the one that's going to save them. They finally found somebody that they can fall in love with, that they can give their heart to. They're going to be okay, and they know everything's going to be fine because you finally come along and you're the one. But the truth is they do that to every single person that they get in a relationship with. You're nothing special. They don't even see you. That's why it's not empathy. In order to have empathy, you have to actually see the person as an individual and have the ability to care for them regardless of your feelings in the moment. What borderlines are doing has nothing to do with empathy. It is projection. It is transference. And that's assuming they're in their good state. So bear in mind, when you're with a borderline, you're with at least two different people. It's as close as you can get to multiple personality disorder, or whatever they call that. It's the dissociative identity disorder. It's as close as you can get without them. They don't actually have multiple personalities, but it's as close as you can get. You're with two people. You're with the person that you fall in love with, which is the very vulnerable, childlike, innocent, incredibly emotionally accessible. You can access all of their emotions, and they seek to access all of yours. They seek to become completely enmeshed with you, which of course is their greatest fear, because once they do get enmeshed with you, then they think that they're going to disappear and die, and then they seek to destroy you. So where does the covert psychopath come into it? So we've got borderlines, we've got narcissists, we've got sociopaths, we've got psychopaths. What do we do with all these words? Well, they're all pretty much saying the same thing, which is somebody who doesn't have any empathy. The sociopath is somebody who doesn't have any empathy and goes out and does whatever they want. They're not necessarily psychopathic. It's just if they want something, they don't really take into account anybody else's feelings. They don't really understand that other people have feelings. They don't have any guilt for what they do. They're a sociopath. They could be perfectly fine in most situations, but when it suits them, they will just do whatever the hell they want, slice your throat, take your money, whatever. You have narcissists, which we've talked about a lot and which you're very familiar with, which is the person who seeks to grab you and pull you into their little fantasy inside of them, and you become their puppet. They control you, abuse you, take you hostage, push, pull, all of that crazy making that they do. And then you have the psychopath. A psychopath is a sociopath, is a narcissist. So not all narcissists are psychopaths, right? But all psychopaths are narcissists. So a psychopath is a narcissist who has no empathy, grandiose, entitled, and no morals whatsoever, doesn't even understand it, because nobody's real. Everybody is just a stick figure that's walking around that they can use for whatever they want. And the psychopath gets pleasure from harming you. They get a sick, grandiose high off of lying to you, deceiving to you, and then harming you and watching you writhe in pain. They get off on that. In fact, just to give you an idea of it, to say that when a narcissist says they have empathy, understand that the kind of empathy they have is not the kind of empathy that you want. They can feel empathic feelings for you. By the way, again, and people mistake being an empath with having empathy. Those are two completely different things. An empath is somebody who feels other people's feelings. That's called intuition, psychic, whatever you want to call it. That's not empathy. You can, in fact, narcissists feel what everybody's feeling. They are very empathic. And they use their ability to feel and sense your emotions to use that against you. That doesn't mean they have any empathy for you. They don't give a crap about you. They don't look at you and go, what would it be like to be in that person's shoes? And I wouldn't like that. So even though I really want to be mean to this person right now, that's the worst thing for them. So I will unconditionally give them something that's helpful for them because I'm more interested in them being happy and individuated. That's empathy. Having a feeling, a squishy feeling inside of you is not empathy. In fact, it can be extremely confused. I'll give you an example. Forgive me, I'm going to get into some unpleasant territory here, but this was years ago when I was doing a movie about serial killers, and I was doing this research on I believe he was a German serial killer, and he was a pedophile, and he would take little boys and he would take them into his underground lair, and he would I'm trying to do this without being as graphic as possible. He would do what you would imagine he would do for his own sexual pleasure, but he would also torture and kill them using sharp implements. Horrible. And he explained that while he was literally carving pieces off of these little boys as they were tied up, when they were crying in pain, he would become overwhelmed with feelings of love and empathy, and he would kiss them on the mouth passionately. And he would cry for them. And then he would continue his abuse and murder. And he did it. He specifically got them to that point so that he could feel his own pain. He was so disconnected from his own pain, from his own abusive childhood, that he needed to project onto a little boy, because that's the part of him that was hurt, and get them in so much horrific pain that then he could finally feel his own pain, and then he would momentarily project that empathy onto his victim. Borderlines and narcissists, when they talk about empathy, it's not a whole lot different from that. It's what they're feeling in the moment, and it's about them. It's not about you. If it's about you, somebody has empathy for you, that means that they decide to do something helpful for you, even if it doesn't benefit them, and even if they're angry with you at the moment. They're bored with you, they're angry with you, they're afraid of you. They still act with empathy regardless of how they feel, and they do that consistently. When they feel good, they act lovingly towards you. When they don't feel good towards you, they still act lovingly towards you, and they don't hold it against you. Borderlines don't do that. Borderlines are filled with squishy feelings. They are filled with all kinds of loving, squishy feelings, and when it suits them in their dance between the vulnerable child and the covert narcissist, which is they're always bouncing back and forth between those two. When it serves them and they're in that space, it's because they're relieving and enjoying their own feeling. It doesn't mean that they're not thinking consciously, I hope this makes them happy. They may be extremely codependent in the moment and saying, I hope he loves this so he falls in love with me. They may honestly feel in the moment when they're being loving to you that this just makes me happy. I just want you to be happy. Sometimes they can just be amazing people. I mean, borderlines, when they're not, when they're when they're not getting triggered, can sometimes be just outrageously wonderful, amazing people. Problem is, it never lasts, ever. If it did, they wouldn't be borderlines. Again, I'm talking about untreated borderlines. Borderlines, if they get into the right therapy, can actually live in a state of recovery. So the covert psychopath is hidden from the borderline. So within the borderline, if they are a borderline, they have a covert psychopath. There's no such thing as the borderline that doesn't have one. If they didn't have one, they wouldn't be a borderline. It'd be something else. So within each borderline is a hidden psychopath. There is a hidden narcissist deep inside of their unconscious that is actually looking forward to destroying you, looking forward to causing you tremendous pain. They are looking, again, I gave you an example. They are looking forward to causing the pain in you that they feel so that they can have a brief release of that. That psychopath will get off on harming you because it gives them a release where they can finally not only act out all their hidden rage that they feel guilty about. It's been suppressed deep inside of them. And when their fear of intimacy clicks in, they then the borderline recedes and the psychopath comes to the forefront and will torture you and harm you in the worst possible way at the worst time. The amazing genius of narcissistic personality disorder, whether it be overt grandiose narcissism or the covert vulnerable narcissism of the borderline, the absolute brilliance of it is that they don't randomly just act out when they seek to really hurt you. It happens at the most vulnerable time. When you feel the closest to them, when you feel the safest, when you feel that everything is going to be okay. In fact, they work very hard to make sure that you get that feeling that everything is going to be okay. And then they strike. And when they strike, you don't see it coming. You think you've been through it 4 or 5 times. Okay, I know it's coming now, but no. We could talk about a lot of things. Maybe in some other videos, we'll talk about what happens between the borderline and the grandiose narcissist. And God help the grandiose narcissist if they get involved with a covert psychopath. So in some ways, the borderline is much worse to be around than an overt grandiose narcissist, because you can see a grandiose narcissist coming. If you're even slightly aware, you can see them coming. But the borderline, not only do you not see them coming, but they will never see their psychopathy coming. Again, what happens is they fall deeply in love with you from the infant perspective. They project onto you. They transfer onto you. They bond to you. But when the bond starts to get real, their fear of rejection combined with their fear of being consumed rises up, and then the inner psychopath, which is like a pit bull that's been on a chain in their unconscious, is now let loose, and they come after you and they do everything in their power to destroy you in an attempt to protect themselves from what they believe is their imminent demise, which they think is coming directly from you. All right, so that's it. If you relate to what I'm saying and you understand how incredibly painful this is, and you've been gaslit out of it by yourself, by your borderline, by society, why don't you just get over it? But you can't. It's because you are now trapped in an intermittent trauma bond cycle that will never go away. Even when the borderline is gone, Even if you've been away from them for 10, 20 years, you will still be trapped in this cycle until you stop it. In my experience, even therapy by itself cannot do this. The only thing that can do it is the one thing that I talk about on this channel, and I share about it in my book, How I Survived My Borderline Girlfriend. Get it on Amazon and Kindle, and will soon be on Audible, audiobooks.thunderwizard.com. All right, that's it. I wish you all the best. Take care.